There is a strange passage in the Bible, a passage that mentions mysterious beings called the Nephilim. They appear in the book of Genesis, almost without warning. The Bible describes a time when the sons of God saw the daughters of humanity, and something happened that has fascinated readers for thousands of years. Then, almost as quickly as they appear, the Nephilim disappear from the story. Who were they? Were they giants? Were they connected to heavenly beings? Were they ancient warriors? Or have later traditions made the story far more mysterious than the original biblical text? And here's where things become even stranger, because the Nephilim are mentioned again much later, in the story of the Israelite spies entering Canaan. So how could these mysterious figures appear before the flood, and then seemingly appear again centuries later? Tonight we're going back to the beginning, to Genesis, to uncover what the Bible actually says about the Nephilim. To understand the Nephilim, we have to begin with a passage that is only a few verses long, but has created centuries of debate. Genesis chapter 6 tells us that humanity was multiplying across the earth. And then the story introduces a mysterious group, the sons of God. The text says they saw the daughters of humanity and took wives for themselves. Then comes the mysterious line. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward. The passage connects them with the sons of God and the children born from those unions. And then Genesis describes these figures as mighty men of old, men of renown. That is almost all the passage tells us. There is no detailed description of their appearance, no exact height, no complete history, and no explanation of exactly where they came from. Even the word Nephilim has been translated differently. Some Bible translations render it as giants, while others retain the Hebrew word, Nephilim, and that small difference matters, because it means we have to be careful when we imagine what these mysterious figures actually were. But who were the sons of God? This is where the mystery becomes even more complicated. There are several major interpretations. One ancient interpretation understands the sons of God as heavenly beings. According to this view, Genesis is describing an extraordinary event involving the heavenly realm and humanity. Another interpretation understands the sons of God as human rulers or powerful men, and another tradition connects them with a particular human lineage. For centuries, Jewish and Christian interpreters have debated these possibilities, but Genesis itself does not stop to explain exactly who they were. That means we need to separate what the text actually says from what later traditions have imagined. The Bible gives us the mystery, but it doesn't give us every answer. But then we come to the Nephilim themselves. What exactly were they? Genesis calls them mighty men of old, men of renown. The Hebrew word Nephilim is difficult to translate with complete certainty. Many English Bibles translate it as giants. Others leave the word untranslated. And this is important, because the Bible never gives us a detailed physical description of the Nephilim in Genesis. It doesn't tell us exactly how tall they were. It doesn't give us a complete genealogy. And it doesn't clearly say that they were the children of angels and human women. That idea became much more developed in later Jewish and Christian traditions. The biblical text itself is much shorter and much more mysterious. The Nephilim are simply there, described alongside the strange events of Genesis chapter 6. And then the story moves toward one of the greatest catastrophes in the Bible, the flood. Then the story becomes even darker. Genesis tells us that the wickedness of humanity had become great on the earth. Violence and corruption had spread, and the story moves toward the judgment of the flood. The Nephilim are mentioned within this strange and troubling period of Genesis. But the text does not stop to tell us what happened to them individually. Instead, the story moves forward, toward Noah, the ark, and the destruction brought by the flood. At this point, it would seem that the mystery should be over. The world before the flood is gone. The Nephilim should be gone with it. But then, the Bible mentions them again. But then, hundreds of years later, The Israelites arrive at the edge of Canaan. Moses sends 12 spies to explore the land. They return with a frightening report. They speak about people of great size, and then they say something extraordinary. "We saw the Nephilim there." The same name appears again, the same mysterious word from Genesis chapter 6. And the spies say that the descendants of Anak came from the Nephilim. Then they describe themselves as grasshoppers compared with these people. So what does this mean? Did the Nephilim actually survive the flood? Did the word Nephilim come to describe another group of unusually large or powerful people? Or were the spies using the language of Genesis to describe the terrifying enemies they believed they were facing? The Bible doesn't give us a simple explanation, and that's where the mystery becomes even deeper. But there is another question we need to ask. What does the word Nephilim actually mean? The Hebrew word is difficult to translate with certainty. Some English translations use the word giants. Others simply keep the original word, Nephilim. The biblical text also describes these figures as mighty men, men of renown. So the picture we get is not simply a story about unusually tall people. It is a story about powerful and famous figures, surrounded by mystery. And when the Israelites later use the name Nephilim in their report about Canaan, the word may be connecting those people with an older tradition. But the Bible does not give us enough information to reconstruct exactly how the two references are related. That uncertainty is important, because the mystery of the Nephilim comes not from how much the Bible tells us, but from how much it leaves unexplained. But the mystery of the Nephilim did not end with the biblical text. Ancient Jewish writers began asking the same questions we are asking today. Who were the sons of God? Who were the Nephilim? And what happened to them? One influential ancient tradition understood the sons of God as heavenly beings who descended to earth. This interpretation became especially important in later Jewish literature, including the ancient book known as First Enoch. In that tradition, the story becomes much more elaborate. The heavenly beings become known as the Watchers, and their offspring become violent giants. But there is an important distinction. Those details come from later tradition. They are not all found in Genesis itself. The biblical passage is much shorter, and that difference between Scripture and later tradition is exactly where the mystery begins. So after all the theories, what can we actually say with confidence? The Bible mentions the Nephilim in Genesis, and again in Numbers. Genesis associates them with the mysterious events involving the sons of God and the daughters of humanity. It describes them as mighty men, men of renown. Numbers connects the name with the Anakim, people described as exceptionally large and frightening by the Israelite spies. But Scripture does not give us a complete biography of the Nephilim. It does not clearly explain their exact origin, and it does not explicitly tell us how the two appearances of the word are connected. That means some of the most popular stories about the Nephilim come from interpretation and later tradition, rather than from a detailed biblical account. And perhaps that's why the mystery has survived for so long. For thousands of years, people have wondered about the Nephilim. Were they giants? Were they mighty warriors? Were they connected to the heavenly realm? Or does the story mean something different altogether? The honest answer is, we don't know every detail. And that's important. The Bible gives us just enough information to make the story unforgettable, but not enough to answer every question. Genesis tells us that the Nephilim were associated with the mysterious events before the flood. Numbers later uses the same name when the Israelite spies describe the frightening people they encountered in Canaan. Beyond that, much of what we hear today comes from interpretation, tradition, and speculation. So perhaps the real lesson isn't that we have solved the mystery of the Nephilim. It's that an ancient passage, only a few verses long, can still make people ask questions thousands of years later. And sometimes, the mysteries the Bible leaves unanswered are the ones we remember the longest. If you want to uncover more of the Bible's forgotten stories, ancient mysteries, and hidden connections, subscribe to Bible After Dark, because some stories are worth looking at twice.